bring this meeting to order. First of all, I'd like to call on Councilman Taylor for an invocation.
Heavenly Father, we thank you today for a beautiful day we had. Thank you for the rain. Continue to bless us. Thank you for protecting us from the storm that passed through last week. Thank you again for allowing us to be here tonight to conduct business for our town. Thank you for the citizens that have attended. Bless each home that's represented. Be with us as we go through this evening. Help us to work in one accord, do the best, and make the right decisions for the town of Tarboro. We ask it all in your name.
Amen. Please rise for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Everybody turn. First item is the approval of the agenda by the council.
Motion to approve.
We hear a second? Second. Motion has been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion is approved. Now we come to our request and petitions of citizens. I'd like to ask each of you to, when you approach the podium, to please start off by giving your name and address and speak directly into that microphone, please. We'll start off with Mary Ann Compile.
Are we supposed to take off our mask or try to speak through all this stuff?
I'll take it off.
Thank you so much. Oh, my goodness. Okay. First off, my name is Mary Ann Compile. I live at 1812 Lake Drive, just in case you've forgotten where I live. Anyway, all kidding aside, I did not come here tonight to debate Black Lives Matter or does not, because in my opinion, the town of Tarboro has never had that issue come up until outside factions have brought this in and caused a division between what's going on and what we've already accomplished thus far. So with that being said, I don't know anyone that has ever disputed this, at least as long as I've lived here in the 47 years that I've been here, okay? So to me, that's a non-issue. But I did come here tonight because I did want to read something that some of you may not be aware of, and that is that when you all took, and this is, I'm talking to the town council people, made an oath to, and I don't know if you used the Bible or what you used, but anyway, when you became sworn in, you took an oath to go ahead and observe the rules and the regulations and the town ordinances of the town of Tarboro. And I would like to read you one of the town ordinances because this is a non-issue to me. Based on what the town issue says, and I'm going to read it to you, so I'll have to put my glasses on so I can read it correctly, excuse me. It shall be unlawful to remove, damage, destroy, mutilate, or deface any structure, monument, statue, planter, fountain, wall, fence, railing, vehicle, bench, tree, plant, or any other property in any recreation area or facility. And it goes on to say how you can't dig out bushes. I won't read all of that. But if you vote to take down or remove a statue or anything on the town common, in my mind, based on what's in our town ordinances, that is a violation of the oath that you all took when you came and sat on this gracious, wonderful organization. That's my point. And if you have a violation of that oath that protects the town common, and that protects, and you don't do this to protect the town common, then you're in violation of your oath and in the town ordinance. And I don't know how you're going to justify that. No one disputes that black lives don't matter. And like I said, I'm not here to discuss that. I'm here to discuss what's on the books. How could you vote to take something down and remove it when the rest of the residents of Tarboro are supposed to follow these traffic ordinances? So that's what I'm asking you to look at. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Billy Wood.
Good evening. I'm Billy Wood. I live at 282 McNair Road. I've been a resident of Tarboro for 50 years. I'm a business owner. I consider myself a leader of the community. I'm a county commissioner, and I'm here tonight to represent myself, and I do not come to represent the Edgecombe County Commissioner body. I do, in my elected role, represent about 7,000 Tarboro citizens. And I've had a deep interest in this issue of the monument on the common ever since it came up. And I've had opportunity to speak with numerous individuals about it. Not one individual of the 70% of the town of Tarboro, which I represent as a county commissioner, has said to me that it needed to be removed entirely. Now, I've been in discussions with people that say we should find a compromise and or leave it where it is. But no one has come to me and said that this monument needs to be removed. As a leader in my business and in the world, as a county commissioner, it's never easy when you have such divergent views. And I would counsel you counsel people to try to find a compromise. I think that when you try to find a solution for something that is so divisive, that the right solution is one where no party is happy. You find a middle ground. If you bow down to one group's demand, let's say that monument is removed entirely, or you bow down to the group's demand that says let's leave it up, either way you will lose. It is my opinion, and I would ask this body here tonight to seriously consider compromise. I would ask that you would entertain a motion that the Confederate monument, the obelisk that stands on a common, that you would consider removing the bronze soldier from the top of the pedestal, and that you would add additional historic context around the monument that tells the story of the 21st century's viewpoint of it. But do not, in my opinion, take the monument down and remove it. Do not deface it by erasing or grinding off any of the letters in which our ancestors put on the monument. Now, my family's been here for hundreds of years, 250 years here in Edgecombe County. And that monument, it says, is dedicated to Edgecombe County soldiers. Now, in today's political environment, we hear the narrative that anyone who gave their life or their service to their town or their county or their state during that war was totally and unabashedly in favor of slavery. At their time and their place, they believed in potentially fighting for that reason, but many other reasons as well. If that was a monument that held the president of the Confederacy there and espoused that slavery was the #1 issue, all you young men should go fight and die, then we should do something about that. But that monument represents 1,400 Edgecombe County citizens of the town of Tarboro, citizens of Edgecombe County. They volunteered, they were drafted, they gave the ultimate sacrifice. I think we should continue to honor them. Now, if we need to evolve over time and find a compromise, so be it. I think that's right. But do not eradicate it. Do not destroy monuments that were put up by our prior generations just because today's political environment says this is what we should do now. I ask for compromise. I really do. The fountain is a Confederate memorial as well. If you so choose to follow the principle in your heart of removing the obelisk, why would you not also remove the fountain? It's a Confederate memorial. If you think about rededicating that, then you have dishonored the reason it was ever put there in the first place. A 19-year-old Tarboro resident, a member of his local militia, which was based in the National Guard at the time, was called up by his town and his state to do his duty. He went to Virginia and gave his life for his town and his county and the state. And then we citizens of Tarboro and Edgecombe County decided to erect a monument in his honor. Are we really going to take that down or rededicate it to something where it was not his purpose? There again, let's add context to what we in the 21st century think that means to us today. But do not put words in the mouths of the people who put it up. Is that my time right here? Please consider a motion that would find a compromise, but not the removal. Thank you.
Thank you. Patsy Miller.
My name is Patsy Miller, and I live at 304 East Park Avenue in Tarboro. I was born and raised in Scotland Neck, educated in North Carolina, and left my home for California at the age of 22 to pursue my career in teaching Spanish. When I married a Marine, little did I realize that our life and family together would make 17 moves in his 26-year career, living and traveling in 4 continents before we drove into Tarboro in 1984, looking for a final home for retirement and a second career. We operated our bed and breakfast business here for 20 years before closing due to a family emergency, and I taught Spanish in Edgecombe County schools. Now, the purpose of my relating this to you is that we learned a great deal about the history of the various countries in which we lived and traveled. And the visual element of history was an invaluable teaching tool. I say visual because we saw the horrors of World War II in Germany at their concentration camps. The German government did not tear down them. They didn't burn the evidence. They left them exactly as they were when General Eisenhower terminated the German extinction of 9 million Jews and other ethnic groups. We visited the Anne Frank house in Amsterdam, where her Jewish family lived in secret in a small attic for several years. The government did not tear down the house. It stands as it was during World War II. And believe me, you would not be able to view this place, see it visually, without learning that history. It was a history lesson, learned from the evil of others who did the unspeakable, because they believed it to be right. Our Confederate history in Tarboro is tied to the people's lives in the 1860s. The nation of 2 geographical locations became split over the economic and social mores of the time, resulting in a war. The result of that war brought a new, united nation together, living up to the Declaration of Independence phrase, all men are created equal. That was a good thing. The statuary on our town common is a reminder that it took a war with thousands of lives lost to learn that lesson. We cannot change our history. We cannot pretend that the removal of those reminders will make things different in Tarboro. If we move those statues to another location, their symbolism remains wherever you plant them. The symbolism of the Wyatt fountain is identical to the statue representing the death of Confederate soldiers. You cannot remove one and keep the other because both are interconnected. I have a question regarding the fountain. Why did the council vote to restore the fountain a year or so ago, spending a large sum of money to do so, if its significance in our history is so repugnant? Are we going to follow like sheep and jump off the proverbial cliff because, quote, it's the political correct thing to do now? Are you aware that in Lexington, Virginia, their decision makers voted not to remove Confederate statues? And the Virginia Military Institute, known as VMI, will not rename its buildings. Not everyone is choosing to bend to the mantra of Confederate evil, The significance of both the statue and fountain has not changed, nor has the significance of the concentration camps changed in Germany. The very important lesson to learn is that both our statue and fountain are very meaningful parts of our national history. If taught correctly, citizens will understand them for what they represent. They do not represent slavery. They are a tribute to the men who died doing what they thought was right to do at the time. Removing statues will not erase a racism that you may think exists here. You shouldn't remove statues that mark one's participation in that war. You can change names and places, but you cannot change what's in someone's heart. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Brandy Page Chapel.
Good evening. I'm Brandy Chapel, 1201 St. Andrew Street here in Tarboro. I'm a 20-year veteran teacher. I've taught in Edgecombe County for 19 years and had the opportunity to listen to and teach some of our fine, young, bright youth in this town. I am for the removal of this Confederate statue on the town common. I do agree with Mr. Wooten that a compromise may be the best thing. I do live in a historic home here in Tarboro that has housed many educators. I live in the Lily and Mary Bridgers home that was built in 1895 and has, like I said, housed many educators. And I do believe that there's no reason to debate taking down structures, buildings. That's why the the concentration camps are still there. I visited Dachau. I have experienced the memorial there, the museum there. I'm not for taking down structures. I don't know why that keeps getting mixed in with statues. I've done a bit of research in order to come to the conclusion that we should remove the statue. I do enjoy the historical background of this town. I love this town. I said 20 years ago, I grew up in Western North Carolina, that I would live here over my dead body because I only visited when it was July and August, and I thought it was just the hottest place in the world. I've come to love it. You'll have to drag me out of here, much to the dismay of some. Slavery is mentioned in the first few sentences of most of the declarations of secession of the southern states. And you'll find it in the first or second, perhaps third sentence. Georgia, you find in the second and third sentence the words African slavery in their secession. Mississippi, it's in the second sentence talking about that they are really into the institution of slavery, and they called it the greatest material interest of the world. South Carolina, it's their first sentence in their Declaration of Secession from the United States. And Texas, it's the third sentence in their Declaration of Secession. And it talks about protecting the institution, this is, and I quote, protecting the institution known as Negro slavery, the servitude of African to the white race within her limits, a relation that had existed from the first settlement of her wilderness by the white race, and which her people intended should exist in all future time. This is what these people were fighting for. Virginia, it's the first sentence. They also mention slavery in their first sentence. And many will argue, and I've heard this argument, that it's about states' rights, and it's about the economy. And people are not wrong about that. But it is about the state's rights to hold slaves. And it was about the economy on whose backs it was built on the backs of slaves. That is exactly what it was about. So yeah, it was about states' rights in the economy, but solely because slavery made it that way. Julian Carr was a person that came and dedicated this statue when we had it put up. And here are a couple of quotes from what he said when he dedicated the Silent Sam statue, which was also a Confederate memorial on Chapel Hill. I won't read the whole thing to you, but part of it, he brags that he, and I quote, horsewhipped a Negro wench until her skirts hung in shreds. This is the person that dedicated our statue here in Tarboro. This is the way this person thought. I've been to 2 roundtable conversations with several town council members I've seen your faces, and I've seen you, they were public meetings in the Common. These weren't held in secret, as some people think they were. And people from both sides were invited to these meetings. The first meeting I went to, anybody who was in opposition chose not to come and share their voice. Not sure why, but they didn't. The second meeting, we did have some people that were asking for a compromise. Mr. Wooten was there, and I do think a compromise might be a good thing. Because I think you made a really good point that if you're going for one side or the other, somebody's going to be upset. I've been called two-faced this week by Mr. Leggett in the back several times because I think a compromise may be the best thing. And I've always said, in marriages, compromise is good, relationships, compromise is good. I don't think that's two-faced. My suggestion is to move the actual statue to the military museum and have some educational programming around this statue. I work at Martin Millennium Academy, and we do take our students to the military museum, and it would be an excellent way to teach our children what really happened. Sorry, I lost my place. We need to continue conversations, sorry.
We need to call.
My time's, okay, I just would like to say that I would like to continue conversations in our town after this. This is just a first step.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Eddie Taylor. Go.
Now, my question is about the answer, so I'm good.
Okay. Dan Leggett.
My name is Dan Leggett, as most of y'all may know. I own a small plumbing business here in town. I do love to talk, and I do know how to talk, but when I get into public spaces like this, it's kind of a little different. I'm here to just lend a voice for what I call the youth in Tarboro. I grew up here. We drove past that statue as kids growing up, never had a problem with it. We ride on 64. Our mayor is smiling, standing beside the Confederate monument for the fountain. It's a part of our history. As Ms. Chapter brought up, we have structures here in our town. She actually lives in a house that was dedicated by the two daughters who dedicated the fountain. She says one thing about the fountains are bad and the statue needs to go, but it expresses how amazing history was built with her house. We had a Confederate colonel build that house, who Mr. Bridgers, who obviously lived at the Grove, which we now call the Blunt Bridgers house. He had a different mindset and ideas back then. Are those our ideas now? Absolutely not. It's the people in our town, as Mr. Wooten said, thousands upon thousands that do not want to remove it. I came here today and I was hell-bent that we should not remove it. Listening to Mr. Wooten, I think a compromise of some sort would be great. I feel like they need to be where they're at with a compromise of history lessons being taught with them. But we represent Tarboro as a historic Tarboro. We put the fountain on a lot of our memorabilia of why we should come to quaint historic Tarboro. But where does it stop? Does it stop at the fountain? Does it stop at the Confederate statue? We have houses that are on the National Registry list that are built by Confederate soldiers, Confederate people that we live in, downtown Tarboro. Those houses are put on this registry to attract people to come and live and visit our town. So are we saying, please come and look at this house, but oh, you can't look at this house because it was built by somebody I do or do not agree with? Does anybody in this room agree with slavery? I would say no, not one person, white or black, young or old. We don't believe in that. What they did 100 years ago doesn't reflect what we do now. I can get myself in enough trouble with my attitude and my mouth in Tarboro. I don't need the help of my ancestors with people trying to speak for me. I do a pretty good job of that myself. And that's my point is, when we ride downtown, do I look at 3 or 4 of these houses and go, oh, yeah, that was built by a Confederate, racist general? No. 90% of people in Tarboro don't know who built these historic houses downtown. And I'm just looking at you, Mr. Pitt, because I see you every day. I can look over here at Mr. Brown. We look at these houses that are built. Speaking of building houses, Mr. Brown builds houses. Do we look at a house built by Mr. Brown and think of his religious background or freedoms, or Mr. Taylor's, or Mr. Mayo, or whoever does the work? No. I work for a lot of people in Tarboro, Republicans, Democrats, Independents, atheists, all. We don't have issues. Do we argue on Facebook? Yes, sir. Do we argue or we talk about our issues together? Yes, sir. Has it ever affected one of my jobs? Never. There's a lady in Tarboro, me and her have never seen eye to eye. We always argue about politics, but when she calls me at 2 o'clock in the morning when her plum is bust, it's not an issue. Because people can separate this day and age, business and personal beliefs. And until we let our town citizens speak, I know our duly elected officials do their job, but at some point, is it 150 people who want to take this monuments and memorials down, or is it 11,000 in the county and the town that says we want it? Like I said, it's not up to me totally, but I would be up for a compromise of some sort. But I do say this: if you're going to tear one down, we're going to tear them all down. And I mean that, so if you don't want to be reminded of the history here, the Freedom Hill sign, why would you want to be, if you don't want to be reminded as a slave person through this Confederate statue, why do you want to be reminded as a freed slave? If you want to erase history, you erase it. It's done. So that way you can go ahead and start being a human being and a person, and we can make our town and our county better. Was slavery bad? Yes. Was slavery wrong? Yes, sir. But at the end of the day, I can't change it, you can't change it, Mr. Chappell can't change it, nobody can change it. But it's nice to read it, see how wrong it was, and learn from it. But if it's nothing to read, nothing to look at, and nothing to carry my granddaughter and say, hey, you see this statue? This guy performed evil, this guy was bad, this guy did wrong things, we don't want to be like that. Or, does she not know anything about the history, and they made their own history? Thank you all for your time.
Thank you. Louis Ridgway.
Louis Ridgway, 1009 St. Andrew Street. It's kind of interesting. I want to talk about compromise, and everybody else is. And so the reason was, I've been to a lot of meetings in the last 30 days. I've been in those meetings where there's one side that definitely have to take it down, definitely has to stand. But the last 2 meetings were interesting in that people really started talking about compromise. What can we do so that everybody's happy? Which I think is great, because this town is going to go one way or the other. If this council votes to actually take it down, there's going to be one side of this town that's going to be totally unhappy, one side that is. Other way around, it's the same thing. There has to be a happy medium so that we can all be satisfied and happy with this. And this council has a very tough job. But I think your job is to find a compromise, find out how we can come together, be together to make this in the event that we're proud of. Because at the end of the day, this is a movement that eventually will end, it will stop. And what's going to happen is, there's going to be a legacy involved. What's going to be determined here will have long-term implications for this town of Tarboro. The decision will be either when we're through, the town will be divided, or it can be united if we compromise. Thank you.
Thank you. Elijah Sellers.
Good evening. I'm Elijah Sellers. I am a rising 11th grade scholar at the North Carolina School of Science and Math. I'm a citizen of Princeton, North Carolina, but I've attended schooling here in Tarboro, North Carolina. And I would like to start by saying that this statute must come down. When we talk about compromise, I think that it is important to look at the history that we have compromised for so long. We have allowed this statute to sit up for so long. That is compromise. That is compromise that blacks have dealt with for years and years. That's compromise. When talking about this statute, I think it is important to differentiate a statue from a house. A statue that sits up high and looks down on me, that was built from Confederacy, that raped women of African descent, that beat and bruised men of African descent. and a house that is eye level that I can walk into. These are two different objects, and no, I'm not saying that the house is any better than the statue, but I'm saying that the statue must come down. Compromise is putting the statue in the Veterans Museum.
Yes.
That is compromise. Compromise is educating, not embracing history, but educating properly. And standing as a town and saying that this statue does not represent us, to sit on the line that we so honor and adore and lift up high. So compromise is moving the statue. And I speak on behalf of multiple students, multiple people from different communities, that this statue must come down. And as we look into a future, conversations around race relations, health, and so much more within our community must be discussed. This statue is a symbol of a system that is broken, not the system itself. So when removing this statue, we must keep in mind that education and so much more is still to be discussed. Again, I'm Elijah Sellers, and I thank you for hearing my discussion.
Demetrius Hill.
Good evening, I'm Demetrius Hill. I stay on 805 Booter Street. Really just going from the heart and off the head. I've said it ever since I'm one of the coordinators that helped with the Assembly Ball. I started coming to the town meetings, being a witness, this, that, and the third. And, we pray to God.
Speak up. Can't hear you.
We pray to God, Jesus Christ. I've heard you say your daughters wanted to remove. Me personally, I could care less about the statue. My thing is systematic racism. But we're in a town, and it hurt my feelings to hear some of you say you didn't know that racism was here. Whatever was said the last meeting, it kind of disturbed me because you represent us. Or, you represent the town. And to hear that, I was like, that didn't sit too well with me. But anyway, you have two different types of people. We know that. Two different races. We know that. We know what the town we're standing in. Just do what's right. That's on y'all. But just do what's right. Just do what's right. Hear people's hearts. Just do what's right. Y'all know what we're dealing with. We know what's going on. Just do what's right. Just do what's right. Just do what's right. That's it.
Thank you. Philip Lamper.
Good evening, Mayor, Town Council members, Town Manager. My name is Philip Lamper. I reside at 3005 Lansdowne Drive, Tarboro, North Carolina. I grew up in Duplin County, which is not too far from here. My wife and I bought a house in 2015, and I've been employed in the Tarboro and or Princeville area for a little over a decade. I've attended some meetings recently on our town commons to discuss the matters before you tonight, and the impression I've been given by many who have lived here their entire lives is that my opinion should not matter very much because I did not grow up here. I hope that the fact that I was not born in Tarboro will not impact your views of my comments this evening, as it has others who I've spoken recently. It's my opinion that the Confederate statue on the common should be moved, and here's why. Based on the conversations that I've had with people in the last several years, not the last several weeks, that I believe that Tarboro is a town that is divided along racial lines. I have a couple of specific stories to demonstrate why I feel that way. There's a gentleman who was in his late 60s, who was a black man who I consider to be family. And I listened to him tell stories about how when he went to get his first mortgage, he was told that even though he could afford the mortgage, he could not be given the mortgage by the bank because if he ever defaulted, they would never be able to resell the house because a black man had lived there. I realize those stories are true throughout the country, but we're talking about Tarboro right now. I'm telling you about a citizen of Tarboro who is a friend of mine. I have another gentleman who I call Pops, that's also a black man, because he's very, very close to me as a father figure. He's a pastor in our town. He also ran an insurance company. And when he started promoting Obamacare, he would walk out to his insurance company's front lawn and find bananas. I find that to be very, very, I feel that shows that in many cases Tarboro does have a racial divide among some factions of the population. The conversations I've been a part of in recent weeks make the racial divide seem all the more prominent. The individuals with whom I've spoken, who do not look like me, have expressed to me that they have very strong feelings regarding the statue and the emotions it invokes in them. I've heard some who support the idea of the statue remaining state that it is a piece of art, and I would like to encourage the town council to consider that if it is accepted as a piece of art, then the fact that it remains on public property implies that the town co-signs what the statue stands for, and not what it stands for to just you individually, but to those who look at it. The statue has to live with CSA prominently displayed on it. We all know that CSA stands for Confederate States of America, and the Confederate States of America wanted to enslave black people, period. Whether you personally believe that the statue stands for that or not, many who stand in front of it will know that the Confederate States of America stood for that, and the statue will elicit a response from those who view it as art should. And whatever they feel from it, good or bad, it will be implied that the town of Tarboro stands for the feelings that they have, which is what is decided tonight will send a message to our town and the surrounding communities. If you choose to leave the statue where it stands, you will be complicit in the emotions that are evoked by it by those who stand in front of it. If you decide to move it, you will help to heal many in your community who have been hurt by it in the past. I realize the topic of money will definitely come up tonight, but what price can you put on helping to heal some of the wounds of slavery and segregation? I've heard this statue be expressed as a teaching tool. I promise you that our students are not learning about the Civil War from that statue. Our students are learning from the Civil War because of the people who stand in front of them and teach. There are many studies in education that show that the most important factor in whether or not a child is successful in school is the teacher who stands in front of them. Whether or not they know about the Civil War will have nothing to do with that statue. I've heard people say in recent weeks that this statue didn't bother people until now, and why does it matter now? But I also would say to the people who wanted to stand that I did not see you standing around it in recent years either. In the years that I've been here, in a little over a decade, I've never seen anybody stand around it and honor it or anything of that nature until we started having these discussions in the last month. And I could have missed them, I'll say that, but I have not seen them. Again, I've heard the question come up, why are we doing it now? Why are we having this conversation now? And I would say that in the past, those same questions have come up. I would venture to believe that people, when we started the country had our Civil War, that people thought slavery had lasted for so long. Why was it a problem then? Why should it change then? Same thing with segregation. Segregation had lasted for so long, I'm sure people said, why should it change now? We've done this for years. There's always a time for now. And who knows if you were not put here for such a time as this, with this decision. I understand that whether the statue moves or not, I want to raise the feelings of racial views in our town, but it will send a signal to those who have been hurt by it for years and years. I've heard. Gotcha. Please consider that tonight. Make a decision to begin the healing process and not to perpetuate pain.
Thank you. Panel Board.
Good afternoon. I'm here as part of the statute also, but I have an issue.
You can take a minute. No, I don't.
County of Board, 206 Hunter Hill Road, Tarboro, North Carolina. My class was the first graduating class of integration. When we first got here,
your phone's echoing.
At the beginning, chapter 3, at the beginning we had a committee at Petitions, we had talk high. Our job was we were chosen to handpick by the city at the end of the town. And we were handpicked to make a choice and make everything be as one and make everything integrated. So we started with the mascot, with the Viking. We had to do it with the tiger. With the children. It hurt us, every black and white. It hurt us to get rid of Tarboro High and get rid of W.A. Petilla High. But somewhere down the line, when we integrated the school, we named the school Tarboro Senior High, which represented both schools. Tarboro High was segregated, W.A. Petilla was segregated. But it was never supposed to go back to Tarboro High ever. So my question is, it bothers me ever since, I graduated in 1971. And this year bothers me to this day how two groups of people, black and white, got together and we voted and voted and voted to make things right for the future. Now, for the first couple of years after we graduated, stayed Tarboro Senior High like it was supposed to. So it involves black and white. Somewhere down the line, when they moved the school from over here to where it is now, the segregated name Tarboro High came back up, and I don't think that was fair. And a lot of my white friends, they ain't not here with me now, but everybody we know that was wrong to do that. We were so comfortable with Tarboro Senior High because it included both schools. And I was wondering, it could be named anything except Tarboro High, or W.A. Petilla High, because we did away with it. It hurt us when we did it, but we had to make a choice that we did away with it. So my thing now is, why do it have to be like that? It's not fair. And that is my reason for this standing here tonight, because it hurt me for years. And I wish it was something that we could do about it to include black and white. Because that's what the beginning of it was. I don't know who changed it, but it was never supposed to be Tarboro High ever again. We got rid of the Trojan, the Tiger's still around, but some things you can't do nothing about. But I'm just glad they had this opportunity. I feel so much better right now speaking about it because I've been holding it in for years. It wasn't supposed to never be Tarboro High again. And I hope we can do something about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Bryce Knight.
Good evening, Council and Assembly. My name is Bryce Knight. I live at 1112 Edmondson Avenue, East Tarboro. I interject East only because, in my opinion, rightly or wrong, much of the decision-making related to important policy and procedure in our town, in many instances, seem to consider and be made with that division in mind. I think this assembly and the representation here is emblematic of that, and I take umbrage to it. The message on the marquee of the old Colonial Theater next door says, "Save our statue and monument." Well, the operative word in context of both statements, our town and our statue, is our, but not our separately, but our inclusive. Now, the following statement is a redress, state comments from opposing viewpoints along with facts regarding the argued issue at hand. The entirety of it is without ill intent, disrespect, or disregard for any citizen's sentiment, opinion, or anything having to do with anything that's in any citizen's mind or heart. As I see it, the initial debate on the Confederate statue has also fallen along these imaginary divide, Panola Street, and it seems that what resolution becomes is also destined to, on the surface at least, appear to favor one side of the street or the other. It's been mentioned quite frequently here. That begs the question, in 2020, mind you, why is that dynamic even still part of the process? In these turbulent and troubled times, a fair and simple solution seems so apparent and so available. Simply unite instead of divide. Why can't it just be about righteousness? An objective look at right versus wrong in this matter must be the rule. I've heard and respect arguments that the statue accentuates the historical value of old Tarboro. There's the one that says the nostalgia of family heritage and the way of life, past and present, is captured by it. How about where is the money going to come from to take it down? And of course, there's even the one that says, I didn't know it was a Confederate symbol at all. I simply thought it was just a nice statue in the park. If any of that or all of that is your reasoning to keep the statue in place, then I say you're being a bit short-sighted. We should take a more factual look at the historical value of it. First of all, the statue was erected nearly half a century after the Emancipation Proclamation. Its construction was more about the region's refusal to accept the loss of the Civil War than it was to honor those killed in it. No record of the honorary 21-gun salute or playing of the military ceremonial tune taps in honor of the fallen. And I too did some research on that event. The event does not tell about the band playing Dixie, the anthem of the Confederate South, at that event. Tarborian women belonging to a group called the Daughters of the Confederacy paid for and sponsored the dedication and celebration event. Somehow back then, they found money to put it up. During that time frame, similar statues and monuments sprung up all over the South, more or less as Jim Crow took hold as a subtle but direct form of intimidation as blacks became more assertive at inserting ourselves into the fabric and promise of America. Other remnants of the mindset are that it remains a tangible reminder of history of enslavement and degradation of human beings. It's representative of outright treason against the United States of America. It oversaw and validated Jim Crow brutality, not the least of which is, present tense, lynching. The thought process behind it enabled the relegation of an entire race to some class citizenship without the right to vote. It literally stood watch over decades of separate but unequal segregation.
Mr. Knight, you need to sum it up.
I will. Recently, it looks down with a proven menace of redlining, gerrymandering, economic disparity, and various other forms of suppression. What I say to you, council, is that you are elected to make these decisions on this type of civic discord. I say to you that this nonsensical argument just further makes for animosity, dissension, and division in this town and for generations yet to come. And I mean, that may be your children, your grandchildren, who will have this argument with mine. It's just time to put right over wrong. Like I say, it's simple. This decision is available. Just do the right thing, as it was said. It's time to put an end to that impractical Panola Street divide.
Thank you very much. Marethia Hibbert. Loretta, speak.
Hello, how y'all doing? Good. My name is Loretta Hilliard. I live on Main Street. I've been in Tarboro my entire life. I don't have anything written down because I've been out of town. I just got back in, but I wanted to be here tonight. I am all for removing that statue. I heard so many questions tonight. Some of those questions was, why now? I heard the movement is gonna end. I heard so many things that's just not right. The problem is, as a black person, that statue represents so many ill feelings towards us. And it's hard to say, let's compromise, and let's be considerate, and let's divide, and let's this, when you're not the one who's being offended. It is us. I don't think no one else should be able to say how we feel. And it's not that it just started, it's just that this generation has gotten a little bolder and we're able to speak our words that our ancestors been afraid to do. I went to a town meeting on the Commons and one of the ladies, she said, well, I've seen it and I knew what it meant, but I've chose to ignore it, and every time I come here, I just don't look at it. Well, I've always been that one to like to face everything head up. I like to look it in the eyes. This is 2020. We should all be able to see with a clear vision this year. We should be able to call black, black, and white, white, right, and wrong is wrong. We don't need to decide what's right or who's right. It's about what's right. Do we have any compassion? Can we love our brothers and our sisters? Can y'all even begin to feel our pain? Y'all have white people and other races have a generation of wealth. I mean, wealth is not in money. It's in so many more things that we were robbed of. My mom couldn't even tell me she loved me for years. It took me to turn 20 to get out to say, hey, old lady, I love you. And she was like, I love you too. And I said it every day, 25, because I love everybody. I mean, it's hard for me to meet a stranger or somebody, and I say it like, dude, I might be a little biased because it's me. If I can't get along with me, it's you, it's not me. But it took me 5 or 10 years to be able to say, I love you too. They just couldn't say it. They showed love by giving us things that we need. And so the problem is it's now because we have learned to find our inner strength. And what they were afraid of because they've seen so much, or they wasn't taught from that generation to that generation, we've learned how to find it. We've learned education, we've done our own, like for myself. I love knowledge. So there's not a whole lot you can get over me, and I pretend to be a little slow sometimes, but I want to know. And I want to know because without knowledge, I don't have any power. And so all I'm saying is I don't really have a whole lot to say other than if we elected you all to sit in these positions, just hear and feel our pain, because no one can tell you how we feel if it's not you. I've been dealing with so much this year that I think, you know what, I'm so sick of this. People want to validate how I should feel. No one can tell me how I should feel. If you want to know how I feel, ask me. And then when I tell you how I feel, don't say, oh, you shouldn't feel that way because. Or because, yes, okay, it could be a learning thing for the generations to come, but it's not going to stop. Let me know because this movement is not going anywhere. And I am with DC, I'm Demetrius here. I am also one of the coordinators for the Sympathy Walk. And I want unity. I love everybody. Like I can get along with everybody. So when does it stop? When is the time? Will it be 15 years from now, 20? The time is now. That's why it's here now, and it's not going anywhere. I got my little boys. I have 6 kids, and I love them all. They all spoiled, and one of them really gets on my nerves. He's the oldest. But nevertheless, my 2 younger boys, they are 9 and 11, and nevertheless, because it's such a big mess. So those that wasn't aware, they are tapping into it, and then they're digging, they're learning more, and then they're being irritated by it, because it is a big thing, and everybody knows it's here now. And so the time is now to remove. Put it in the museum. Let those that want to go and look at it and be educated on it have that choice. But because it sits, as they say, in the prize of Tarboro, which is our town commons, which I have learned belongs to everyone in Tarboro, let everyone feel good and feel safe and not in, because it's hard to intimidate them now. So I can look at that money like I could care less about it, and that's how I feel. I'm not intimidated by it. I pay it no mind. But if my brother and my sisters are hurting, should I not feel that pain? Because at first I said, I'm not speaking on the money, I could care less about nothing. Then I started hearing all these stories. I heard one lady say to me, well, you know, I'm fat, I could get skinny. And if I'm skinny, I could gain some weight. If my hair too short or too long, I can, but I can't change my color. Well, my great-grandmother is full, but she's a white. My grandfather's a Cherokee Indian. I'm everybody. So I'm fat, and I got short hair, and I ain't changing, not for anyone. And so we just got to know how to hear someone else's pain. So I stand with removing the money. Thank you.
Thank you.
I know I got a big mouth.
Alicia Ruffin. Alicia Ruffin.
Avenue. The statue should come down. Why should we have to compromise on what is right? Black Americans have been compromising on civil rights issues since the beginning of America. It makes no sense to compromise on what's right just to appease racists. If you look at who's running on the state and who wants them taken down, it's obvious who's been oppressed by them. You should listen to your black friends and citizens when they tell you it hurts them. How are we supposed to move on or move forward as a town if we keep these hateful monuments up? We don't want to be the last town to take them down. Don't compromise on the basic human decency of removing them. These are the beginning steps of righting a centuries-old wrong. Thank you.
Thank you. Greg Higgs.
I'm trying to put my phone off. It's hard to do. I really don't get no echo. Good evening. My name is Greg Higgs. My name is Greg Higgs. I live at 1105 Brad Avenue. I can't speak about the ornament. I wrote some things down. I attended 3 meetings concerning this statute situation. The first meeting I attended was here, and what got to me when one thing I heard people say was the blacks, the outsiders, coming to destroy part of our history. At no time did any African Americans stand up to the podium and say anything like the whites or anything like that. On the second meeting I attended to was, what's the lady's name? She did the history thing. And she would tell us about the buffalo, that they had the black buffalo soldiers, and told me to do the check. So I went and checked into what buffalo soldier came from. And it showed where it came from. The Caucasian started the buffalo soldier because they were afraid to fight the Indians alone. So that's how that came along. And the third meeting I went to, we were talking about some education people that used to be with the school system was saying that we need to teach the kids about the statues and everything, about the history of the statue. Do we really want to put that in the school system and tell the truth to what happened about the statue, how the statue came along to be there and everything? I don't think so. And my situation about the statues, and Mr. Teller, I know last meeting you said that we need to talk to some of our family members and see what they think of, how they feel about the statue. I did like you said. I talked to one of my uncles, and my grandfather and my family were the first ones to move on Baker Street Extension in 1924. The first black family to move there. My uncle that I talked to moved there in 1924. His first time ever coming into the town of Tarboro was 1942. He said because he was afraid, because they kept telling them about coming across the Cummins, walking across the Cummins. He didn't never come to inside the city until 1942. So I checked the history. I was 20 years old when my grandfather died. He died, he was 98 years old, and he was born in 1800. So my thing with the statue situation, we keep hearing history. Do we want to teach the kids about the history? Look at it now. Most of y'all are over 50, except for take you about 20 something. But everybody else is over 50 years old. You know, I'm 51. You're 51. Okay. But the statue situation needs to go. We bring up young people now. These young people don't want to hear what about that statue. You know what I'm saying? If y'all tell the truth about the statue, it'd be a lot of people upset. I don't think we're gonna go in the school system and teach the kids the truth about the statue. And somebody was saying that the schools, I was on Facebook the other day, talking about school be taking the kids out there for field day. I never did. I talked to all my grandkids. I talked to some of the kids in the community. I talked to some of the kids over there in Mr. Taylor neighborhood. None of them said they ever went to the comments and been talking about the statue. So I don't know what they come about that the schools used to take the kids on the comment to teach about the statue. I know there's gonna be a difficult decision to make it on y'all hand. There's gonna be a lot of people upset. Either way, y'all just make the decision and decide where to go. The African American will be upset, Caucasian will be upset, but I think y'all need to make the decision for the young people. Think about how young folk, as they grow up, learning about what's going on there. Let's go back. Let's not go back to then. Let's start now and teach our kids how we get along as a community and everything. Not what that statue did to us back in the day. Thank you.
Thank you. Steve Ridge.
My name is Steve Redditch, I live at 900 St. Andrew Street. I personally live in the house that my wife was born and raised in. And also I'm renovating a house that was built in 1771. So from my perspective, history is important, good or bad. So we must learn from it. And tonight, I can honestly say that I do not know what it's like to be an African American in today's time. Quite simply, I do not. Similarly, none of us here tonight, in this room or listening, know what it's like to have been black or white in the 1860s or the early 1900s. Personally, I'm not in favor of removing history of any kind, like I said earlier, good or bad. History is for learning. Kids go to school, they learn 3 R's. But as parents, we also teach them life's lessons. And that is part of the history that we have here, so we have to teach life's lessons and reconcile that with history. As we look forward towards the future, we always need to keep an eye on the past. My question is this: how do we want to be viewed 100 years from now? We need to reconcile the past with the future. Let's reach a compromise that educates future generations and does not erase history as it is here today. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe that's it. Okay. We will now move on to town manager's recommendations. Town manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, I ask council to approve the consent items on the agenda.
Second. Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion approved.
Okay, first action item on the agenda is memo 20-42, which is the Confederate monument discussion. This discussion matter was tabled from the last meeting.
I'd like to ask a question, which has been brought forward.
Please turn your mic on.
Question was brought, and I think we have discussed this in the our attorney and learned that council does have the right to remove the monument. We do have a legal right to do so, as it is owned by the town of Tarboro, and the county council can make such a decision.
Town attorney can speak more to this, but based on all the information we could find, it's solely the property of the town at this point.
And again, we do have the right to make a decision as to stay or to removed.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Anyone?
I'd like to say I've spent a lot of time going door to door throughout my work, talking to as many people.
So are we already moved on? What's up with all that?
The discussion of the federal.
Oh, the monument, okay.
Yes, sir.
I didn't know that, we moved to that. Okay. All right.
Action items.
Nice,
Go ahead.
But, CD, since you and Councilman Mayor asked me to postpone my motion for the last meeting, I would like the opportunity to go ahead and make my motion, and then we can have a discussion. Okay, if I may do that at this point. I make a motion to carefully and respectfully remove the Confederate statue from the Tarboro Town Common at the cost determined by the town manager to be put in storage until a suitable private location at no further cost to the town has been determined, preferably where it still can be honored by those who wish to do so. That's my motion.
Motion, do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been moved and seconded. Further discussion?
Now, since I made a motion, by Robert's rule of order, one to make a motion, one to be first to speak. So I'd like to go ahead and speak and address some things. One of the reasons why this idea that it's educational and that kind of thing is that the wrong education has been taught, and as long as that statute there are going to be a lot of myths and false information that is being spread about it. I would like to read a few things. One of them is John Sweat Rock. He lived between 1825 and 1866. He was the first African American granted admittance to argue cases in front of the United States Supreme Court. I'll just give a little more background. He started out being a dentist, and then because of the illness, he decided to go on to be a medical doctor, and then after that he went on to become an attorney. And I'll read an excerpt from a speech that he gave to the Massachusetts Anti-Slavery Society on January 23rd, 1862, in which he stated the following. Now it seems to me that a blind man can see that the present war is an effort to nationalize, perpetuate, and extend slavery in this country. In short, slavery is the cause of the war. I might say, is the war itself. Had it not been for slavery, we should have had no war. Through 240 years of indescribable torture, slavery was drawn out of the bones, the blood, the muscles of Negro, hundreds of millions of dollars, and helped much to make this nation rich. This was during the time of slavery, so this myth is already trying to be perpetuated. This is from whatever else I forget, said ex-slave and abolitionist Frederick Douglass, said in 1894, I shall never forget the difference between those who fought for liberty and those who fought for slavery. Also, the Southern Poverty Law Center did some research. These monuments also symbolize the reestablishment of white supremacy following the Civil War. They rightly point out that the vast majority of statues, streets, and schools dedicated to the memory of the Confederacy date from the period of 1890 to 1930. For decades, when the legal culture and political efficacy of Jim Crow was under heavy construction. Another memorial spec was following the 1954, after 1954, in which the Supreme Court decided Brown versus Board of Education. And coincidentally, the 100th anniversary of the war outbreak. The statues were blunt instruments in institutionalizing white supremacy and blotting out the dual sins of treason and slavery. These statues reinforce the romance of the Union. And
And I can go on, slavery was the issue, and so one already said, yes, it was about states' rights to enslave people, but also about finance, because slavery was a financial system. I think what the issue here is not, we're kind of missing something here. Nobody's saying that a certain group can't honor their history. But what we're saying, at the center of the common, that now belongs to all of us. At one point, yes, it was white supremacy and it was intimidated as Greg, intimidated even crossed white line. I wonder what we call it white line was Panola Street. And what I'm saying is, but it doesn't belong now in the common. That's what we're trying to say. Honor your history where we want to, and you got enough resources and money to put up and put that status somewhere where it doesn't fear anybody, where you have an opportunity to honor. So what I think is so unfortunate, and I think is people don't understand that every time we've had to ask for allow us feelings to be considered, our lives to be considered, our civil rights, our recognition considered, yeah, there's always going to be some resentment. There's always going to be some type of misunderstanding or sense of entitlement. And that's kind of what we're saying. This statute belongs because it's entitled for us to honor it there in the common. What I'm saying to you, that I agree with the young man. I think he pointed out earlier, the young gentleman said, the cover Bible was 116 years of that statute being there. And now it's time to move it. And now it's time to put it somewhere where you can honor it, but at the same time respect others. And I know it's not taught all the time. And I know it's not very taught. But that's what the lesson is for our future. Once we move past this, just like integration, and there was a lot of resistance there, just like ending slavery, there's a lot of resistance there, just like we vote the right, we still get resistance to our right to vote. So I'm saying, rather than see it as a deprivation, see it as something given to the town. This is time for our giver. We want to have a real relationship with the racism. It should be where everything that we get, every type of recognition, every type of understanding of our situation and feeling, we have to fight for. This is an opportunity to give. So, okay, we're back on this. We can move it somewhere where we can still honor. So I don't think you have a right to still have that statue there when it affects so many people. And I'm saying some things are about right or wrong. And then I think it's just wrong. So that's why I made the motion.
Okay, Councilman Brown, back to you. I just wanted to say, I spent a lot of time thinking about this, and I spent a lot of time walking the roads, talking to people, person to person, which is the way I like to do it. I like to hear people's opinions. I like to go into details and hear everything they have to say, and give people value to what they have to say. I learned a lot. I always do. I encourage the last meeting, go out and talk to your older people. They have a lot to tell you. I spoke with a lot of young people. I see a lot of growth from where we used to be to where we are now. So we are not where we used to be. We have made gains. Now, have we made all the gains? No. Oh, there's still things to do? Yes, there are. But we have made progress. And I have seen it in listening to people. I was a little surprised when I went out and I did pretty much target the African American that lived in my area more so than I did, the white people, because I really wanted to know how they felt. Some gave me very long answers, and some gave me very short ones. But the long ones were really good to hear. But during my time, I found that there's a lot of also still a lot of African Americans who would choose just to leave it out. There are some who would love to take it down. And they gave different reasons for different why to just leave it there, some gave differences for why to take it down. So, my decision is going to be based on what I've heard and what I've learned, and, also talking to all the rights, and, some of them mentioned about removing it, and some have mentioned about leaving it up. Now, I didn't get to talk to everybody, some people wanted home, but I did get out and talk to people, so, that's all I'm going to say. Thank you. Thank you. Councilman Taylor.
Couple of questions again. In Mr. Woodard's motion, should the council vote to move the monument? The question on the cost, if there is a cost, and there would be, we will follow a normal procedure in accepting bids for that.
Based on the estimate that we received, it falls within an informal quote range. So we would get quotes, but not necessarily a formal bid process would have to be followed.
And we would also clarify the fact that we would, at a later meeting, determine if the monument was going to be moved, who would be recipient or new owners of the monument, and they determine where they would want to put it. That would be a decision of the council as to who to award the monument to.
That's right. As with any property that the town owns, there are procedures that have to be followed for disposal or selling of that property, so we would have to follow those.
That's what I want to clarify.
Okay, Councilman Jenkins.
Yes, sir, I'd like to, thank you. There you go, right back. Offer a substitute motion, because I feel that we've heard very good valid arguments on both sides. I think one of the things that we need to understand, and probably form a commission, and I'd recommend the commission be chaired by the attorney, and that 4 people be picked, preferably not council members, but 4 other people, to decide what to do with the statue. Whether to take it down, to, as Mr. Williams said, reach a compromise and put something in the paper, but not remove the object itself, and what to do with the white fountain. We are all faced with a bad situation here, and we're all, the United States is faced with a bad situation with COVID-19. Right now, we have things in Tarboro that are not open because of COVID-19. And my question is, where is the town going to come with the money to pay for whatever it costs to remove it? Further, I think that we have reached an accord tonight, at least from what I heard from the people that were spoken, that it's about 50-50 or maybe 60-40, but it just depends on which side fits you on. I think that Billy Wooden's remarks and Mary Ann Cabela's remarks that we need to reach a compromise of what is the best thing to do. And so my motion is, number one, that we form a committee that's chaired by the attorney. And
I don't think another motion can be made. I'm going to have a motion.
So vote on.
What was that? Another motion. We already have another motion.
He moved to make a substitute motion or an amendment to the motion. So this can be voted
I
on.
want to research that because we have a motion before the council. And that motion needs to be voted on.
Correct, but you can have an amendment to a motion or a substitute motion made while the motion is pending. And that vote can be made
So
prior to the original motion.
And which motion has to be voted on first?
This has not been seconded yet, but Mr. Jenkins' motion has to be voted first. Substitute or amendment to your primary
I don't
motion.
think that's appropriate. I don't think it's appropriate.
Should I find the-
Okay, we have a substitute motion.
I'm sorry, he's checking to see whether that is appropriate.
I don't have that up. Give me just a minute. Mr. Mayor, the decision chair is ultimately, the decision is going to be ultimately yours as chair of the meeting, but my opinion that you are allowed to make a substitute motion or an amendment to a pending motion.
Okay, then I will, entertain a motion.
I am asking for a ruling on this, not opinion. I'm asking facts, I'm asking facts on this.
I don't have a copy of Robert's Rules of Order with me.
Because I've never seen where a person can make a motion, second motion, somebody just come in and overrule that motion.
I believe that's correct, though. I second, it's a substitute motion.
Well, I'm not
I'm no expert in it.
I'm not sure whether that person, another member can make a substitute motion.
Well, we have to vote on that, whether it's admissible or not.
No, I think they're going to make a ruling on this. But I'm asking for a ruling. I just want to make sure.
General classification of motions, you can have a main or principal motion, then you can have a subsidiary motion or an incidental motion. You have a privileged motion or other unclassified motions. So this will be a subsidiary motion to the main motion of Mr. Wooders. Table of contents. Skip
That's we vote on the substitute motion.
I don't see where you're talking about substitute. What are you saying?
So it's called subsidiary motion. He used the wrong phrase, but so that's what his intent was.
So we have a motion on the floor. Mr. James' motion, do I hear it? Restate the motion.
Obviously, this council is at odds.
Mr. Jim, I will ask you to allow my motion to go forth and vote on it. Then you can make your motion if it's okay.
Yes, sir, I made a second to your motion.
Huh?
I made a second to your motion, amendment.
I'm
I'm allowed to do that under Robert's Rules of Order.
You're allowed to amend my motion.
No, I'm allowed to make an amendment to your motion, a second motion, right?
And we will vote on that and then vote on yours. So, the motion, the substitute motion has been made. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
I just don't think that's appropriate. I just don't think it's appropriate. I don't see anything out here that says that that's done. I don't see anything out here that says that that's done.
The motion has been made. The motion has been seconded. This is second. Now, all those in favor of the substitute motion?
I will not repeat the motion.
Okay. John, can you repeat the motion?
The first motion that I made was that we, excuse my language, but it just struck at one time. That we, excuse me, I have the floor, I think.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Thank you. No crosstalk.
I'm talking to myself.
Oh, I'm getting here down here.
Okay, all right. Well, go ahead.
Okay.
I'll make a substitute motion after that.
Mr. Mayor, do I have a floor?
Yes, you do.
Thank you, sir. That we postpone the argument over this statute until a commission is formed with the town attorney chairing the commission and the town manager pick 4 more people to be on the commission
not those of the council because of the subdivided interest in the council, that we come back at the next meeting and hear how long it takes, whether it takes one meeting or 2 meetings, and hear the other, also that we, I think I said that, that there are 2 civil war memorials on the common, and that has been discussed openly in the public, that both of them come off. If one comes off, we just don't take one down, that they both come.
Wait a minute. Are you adding to your motion?
No, it's the same motion. We want a commission to study.
Study, right?
Correct.
Right.
I think if I understand in the length of term that I've been up here, that those memorials, when they were placed down, they had a request by the people who put them there that this is what happens to them. That's why I want a committee to study what is supposed to happen with the big monuments, whether they go to somebody else or we can trash them or hunt them down, or what we can do with them. And number 2, the second part of that motion is do both of them go because they're both Civil War monuments. That's my motion.
Do I hear a second? Second. The motion has been moved and seconded.
I don't know, somebody had 3 motions, but how many motions do we have? What was the motion?
You've got substitute motion to your motion. That's what we're voting on now.
All right, well,
Substitute motion. It's been moved and seconded. All those.
Hold on before you say that. Jack, you want to speak? I just think that this is just another, for those who don't want the money to come down, to be able to put their voice up before the council. And that's what's going on. And if we're going to put it in the hands of an attorney, if we're going to put it in the hands of an attorney, this is one of the things that a lot of people don't understand. When we first talked about this at last meeting, there were 2 things that were suggested and recommended. And one was that we referred to the Historical Society, State Historical Society. And the second was that we get our attorney to look into it. A lot of people that I don't know and this is why I'm having a problem with it, is by putting it in the hands of the attorney. When you use legal authority and institutional control to maintain a bias or a prejudice, especially racial prejudice, that's what we call systemic racism. And that's what people don't understand. We might have prejudice, we might have certain discrimination, all of a sudden. But when it's backed by our legal authority and institutional control, that's systemic racism. And that's why I have a problem. You know, I let it play out, and the Historical Society decided this was out of the city. And there was nothing, of course, that's legally that can be done to stop us from making this decision. But to put it in the hands of an attorney to give it some type of legal authority I think is a mistake. So that's why I would be against the motion. I think the council has a right to make this decision, and it's our responsibility to make this decision, rather than putting it on somebody else.
Is there any further discussion?
May I speak?
Absolutely.
I think that this is a very divisive issue, and I personally do not see why we should have a Confederate monument there. However, the Civil War was fought here in Tarboro. There was a POW camp, and there was also an auxiliary hospital here on the town common. There were 1,400 folks that served for the Confederacy, and there are also 50 folks that escaped slavery, went up north. They were not Buffalo soldiers, they were U.S. colored troops that served the Union. I agree that we should not have Confederate symbology on the commons. However, I think it is significant that the Civil War was fought here. And if it means that we take the soldier from the top down, I'm all for it. But I think that we should commemorate the entire war, everybody that fought, because it was fought here. None of the other monuments were fought here. None of them have had more impact than that war. I think that, I believe Abraham Lincoln said that he would have preserved the Union without freeing a single slave. He would have preserved the Union by freeing everybody, and he would have preserved the Union by freeing some and leaving some enslaved. Therefore, I think that it was good that that war was fought, because it ended that. And I think that we need to commemorate the fact that it was here. I believe that that is the opinion of the people of the ward that I represent, not entirely, but a large majority. And that's why I think that it would be good to have a commission set up to figure out what we can put on that, the who, what, when, where, why, and how it got put there. The who, what, when, where, why, and how we came to this decision. That way, for future generations, we can say that we came to this impasse and this is what we decided. I think it is important that this is documented. And that is why I support Councilman Jenkins' motion.
Is there any further discussion? The motion has been moved and seconded.
And we need to wait on Ms. Jordan to return, please.
Correct. The motion has been made and seconded. Discussion has been made. Do you have any discussion? Further discussion?
I just want to simply say that I think we were elected to make decisions for this town, and to keep prolonging this issue is not necessary. I think we need to go ahead and make a vote. It is going to be what it is, and just want to get over it. Keep prolonging, keep coming back and forth, back and forth. You already know there's an African American, nobody that's in here that's not African American. Speak for me, how I feel, and what I should and should not feel. And I done said once before that my great-grandmama grew up on a plantation. She did not teach me hate. She taught me to respect everybody, and she taught me to carry myself as a respectful person. I had deep foundation in Christian values, and so either you believe the 66 books or you don't believe the 66 books. There's no in between. God does not like lukewarm people. So a lot of you go to church every Sunday, Bible study during the week, and pray to the same Jesus and God that I think you ought to be. I don't know if it's the same one I pray to, but He's not for what's going on right now, and that is what some people say, our. Yes, it is ours. It is you all white people's heritage, not ours. None of you all can tell me how I feel. Now, when I didn't know better, I didn't know. But now I know better. I know the history. I know what it stands for. And like I would say again, there's nothing in this town. I asked Miss Fleming, the historian for the town of Tarboro, and if my good buddy Rudolph Knight was living, I would have asked him, is there anything that exists in the town of Tarboro to remind any white people, Latino, Asian, whoever, of any sort of past? There's nothing, no monument, there's no plaque, there's nothing written anywhere that reminds you all, since it's only white people in here, I don't know if somebody else does it, of any sort of past. And you cannot sit here tonight and tell me how I should feel. And I too have young grandchildren. I had 3 boys all weekend, and I educated them the whole time I had them about different things. And I don't want to have to tell them when we come down, walk to the pounds and say, gee, mommy, who's that man up there and why is he there? And then they ask me some more questions, I don't even want to be a part of the discussion. So if you all want to celebrate your heritage, then God bless you. You celebrate your heritage. And do any of y'all, will it change any hatred that you all have in your heart tonight? No, it won't. And I don't care about that. Because I respect people that respect me. But as a person, and as a black woman, and a black descendant of an ex-slave, and so forth, I do not think it should be on public display. Do I want it destroyed? No. Do I want it removed? Yes. It can be celebrated wherever y'all want to. Any rebel flag flying, people, whoever, whatever y'all want to do, that's your talk. That's your business. I don't care. I'm going to live my life. And I'm going to live according to how I was taught with the 66 books. So, no, I don't think we should keep going on and get committed and this and that and the third. You putting Chad on the spot.
That's right.
That's not his business. That's our business. There's no legal issue here. It's a moral issue here. It's not about black or white. But there's nothing in the town of Tarboro. If it is, please stand up, tell the truth. If there's something here that reminds any of you all of something really bad that, you know, about your history, no. I asked Ms. Fleming, she's supposed to be the expert. She said no. So therefore, I would want you all to feel righteous as I feel now. You ain't sleep with yourself tonight. It ain't about you. It ain't about none of us here. It's about what's right. And if you can sleep with yourself tonight and talk to the same Jesus I talk to, then you sit out there and have your same feelings. You can't tell me how I should feel, what should hurt me. You can't do it. None of my co-council members can do the same. And I don't want Chad put on the spot. Okay? So I think we need to go ahead and put this to a vote and let's get it over with. Either you will admit it or you're not.
That's right.
Either way, you got to live with your decision.
Okay. The motion, the second subsidiary motion to form a committee and include both, just write down both the monument and the fountain.
Yes.
All right, moved and seconded. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Those opposed?
Aye.
We have to do a hand raise, please.
40.
Well, just we got to raise hands.
We for John's motion now.
John's motion, it's not yours, yours is coming up next. John's motion is to form a committee and include both the fountain and the monument in that committee. Is that correct, John?
Citizens, my motion was to form a committee to see if we're doing the right thing. Based on what Mr. Wood said, to whether the statute should come down or something go in place of it. The opposite state, the statute is not a problem with me, whether it stays or doesn't. That's not the problem. It's the moving part of the history of Tarboro for 150 plus years that I can remember. And then we have the second part.
Well, the way that I understand your substitute motion was that we would form a committee of 4 people. And they would come back to us, and everybody share, which is the 5th. And that they would come back to us with a recommendation. Is that correct, what you're trying to do?
Yes.
Okay.
On both the fountain and the statue.
And he wants to include both items. That's correct. So, all those in favor of that motion signify by raising your right hand. Count, please. All right. All those against that motion signify by raising your right hand. Okay, the motion has been defeated. Now, back to your motion.
You want me to restate it?
Well, I think you might need to briefly.
My motion was that we carefully and respectfully remove the Confederate statue from the town common. Excuse me. Make sure that's right. My motion was, I made the motion to carefully and respectfully remove the Confederate statue from the town common at the cost of determined by the town manager to put it in storage until a suitable private location is determined, and no further cost to the town, preferably where others who could continue to honor it if they choose to do so. That's it.
Okay. That motion did get a second. Did get a second. Okay. Is there any other discussion? Yes, please.
I would just like to make one comment. I'm not sure how this vote's going to go right yet, but keep in mind that this is not a easy decision. This has been a very tough and trying decision. So please respect whichever way it may go, and honor each one and everyone, and just, we'll get through it one way or another. That's it. Thank you.
Well said. Okay, so in respect to his motion, all those in favor of his motion signify by raising your right hand. All right. All those against that motion signify by raising your right hand. Yeah. 5 to 3. Against that motion? In favor of the motion. Okay, I'm sorry.
That's not fun.
Okay, so the motion is made and carried. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. Go ahead. Steve, go ahead.
Now this motion is carried. Should we form a committee, an oversight committee as far as what to and who the statute to go to and when to take it down and to look into the options of who may be able to receive it and take it?
We already told the town manager.
I already decided we put it in store, take it down. We just vote on it, take it down.
Now, the reason I'm saying that
Put it
is,
in store until we find a place.
okay,
That's part of the motion.
okay, let me give you, say something to you. It's easier for someone to take the statue when it's coming down so they can put it on a flatbed semi-truck to be able to take it wherever it needs to go than it is for the town to take it down and put it in storage and have to get another crane to come and take it off of one truck, put it on another truck. So if it can be arranged for that time of when it's taken down, then whoever's going to receive it, then they'll have their flatbed truck there, they're trying to take it down, put it right on their flatbed, and they can haul it wherever they need to go. That's why I was saying that. That way it doesn't have to be moved twice, or we don't have to store it or anything else. Once it comes down, it's over with, we don't have it.
I got what you're saying, but you try to undo the motion. The motion said, put it in storage until we find a place, public place. That was part of the motion that you voted against. So I'm saying you can't undo the motion. The motion's already voted on.
Well, I can make a new motion. Well, I'm just trying to save some time
I've already talked to the town manager.
Just go pull it down with the truck and be done.
You don't have the right to speak, Mr. Leggett.
We've already,
Have your time.
the town manager said he can keep it on something, right? He's in transfer. You can already do that.
Well, the reason I'm saying is an organization that I know that you told me may receive it would be able to get a semi-truck and a flatbed, they would be able to put it on there, and they'd be able to take it off with it.
But part of that is the town manager. We don't need to have a motion.
Okay.
Part of the motion's already there. Already have the town manager.
Okay, the motion passed 5 to 3.
All right, next item on the agenda is memo 20-43. It's a contract for rehabilitation. It's in relation to our essential single-family rehab program. The town of Tarboro definitely bid opening for the rehabilitation of 5 dwelling units on Friday, July 31st. For the ESF ROP 19 project, 2 bid packages were received and the minimum bid tabulation sheet are attached. Based on the bid responses, it's recommended the council vote to award contracts to Evans Custom Builders and Strickland Construction as indicated in the attached memo, and that those contracts be executed by the town manager.
Moved and seconded. Further discussion?
Yes, I want to add, where exactly are these units located? Where are these units?
815 Bradley Street, 148 Warwick Drive, 3057 Southtown.
I will look at it when I was looking at it. I'm sorry. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Motion and second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion is carried. Other reports?
I don't have any other reports, Mr. Mayor.
Town attorney?
No report, thank you.
Council members, you know, take us on that first.
Well, thank you. Tonight's been an interesting night. I'm sure Facebook is already burning. But it's pretty unique in my opinion that someone mentioned that this is the year 2020. 2020 has an analogy in the world of eye care of having good vision. I think we should have good vision tonight because I think history will truly show that we made the right decision, we did the right thing at the right time. And I'd like to think in 1903, when that monument was put up, and I don't want to plagiarize something that I heard on Sunday morning. Dr. Haley from Hayes Barton Church talked about non-intentional racism. I'd like to think that in 1903, when the Daughters of the Confederacy established or put that monument up, that they weren't demonstrating racism. I'd like to think that they weren't thinking about, well, it's evident to me that they weren't thinking about the impact that the monument would have on others. But in 1903, the war had been over about 60 years thereabout. But yet, I'm not black, but I don't think from history that I know, black people's lives had improved an awful lot. They still had to go to the back door of a restaurant to get food. They couldn't sleep in the same hotels that whites did. So there was racism that still went on. But again, I'd like to think that when those folks put that monument up, that it was non-intentional racism. But I have said this in here a number of times. I've taught a lot of management classes, particularly around sexual harassment or bad workplace behaviors, when I talk about intent versus impact. So it really doesn't matter what the intent was when they put it up. What matters is the impact that it had on total society and all the citizens. I just think, again, we did the right thing. We didn't say tear it down. We did say, let's move it to a more appropriate place. Let's find that place. We'll find the money somehow to do, again, the right thing. This represents to me probably my thoughts and how I've changed over time. Because when we were told we had to wear a mask, I scoffed at that. I really did. But over the last couple of weeks, when I actually was exposed to a degree to the COVID-19, and my children said, Dad, you gotta wear your mask, and you gotta not work for a while till this thing calms down a little bit, I started wearing my mask. And by doing that, having my face covered up, believe it or not, I've come to see things a little more clearer. I've had to look at myself.
Yes, sir.
And there's been times that I would have told you 2 years ago or 3 years ago when all the things were going on about Silent Sam. I was right there with people that was upset about that and how it happened. I still don't believe in mob decisions. I believe in doing things the way we did tonight. But I'll just say, I think what we did was a greater for the good, just like wearing masks. We're going to wear them for a while yet, but I think it's going to be for the good. But I'll go back to the first analogy and say that I think in time we will be seen as having good vision tonight in what we did. And for those folks that are upset, like I said, Facebook will be burning up. Even the last meeting there was a comment that said, we need to replace all the town council. Well, do it. Make sure that's clear. People that don't agree with what happens here, first of all, go vote.
That's right.
You know the last election we had, and I'm on fire now. The last election we had for 4 wards out of a town with 13,000 people, we had about 400 that voted, 100 per ward. That's crazy. So if you don't like the way things do or go on in this building and with this council, then go vote. And I challenge you to run for a seat. I think we did the right thing, and I'm proud of how the vote went tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Woodard.
Yeah, I agree. I think we did the right thing. It's hard to do that. Everything I try to do as a council member, or any group that I'm a part of, I have 2 things that I go by. One, I try to do what's best in the long run, and I always try to do what's right. I also know that many times that isn't readily apparent to people. But I'll assure you that the truth will come out in the end. I'll assure you that our children and our children's children won't have to deal with this issue in the same way. And we have made this possible by making this decision tonight. I just don't think we need to keep holding on to things that aren't right. I respect everybody's opinion. I respect what people say. But I do believe we're doing what's right, and I know there's something I can do with what's right tonight. I would like to change the subject a little bit and say that I'm very pleased. I talked to the town manager today about the industrial drive, what's going on out there. We have some new development that we voted on, the council did. Part of the reason why that's taking place is because the council did offer some incentive with the recommendations from the town manager. And I was really shocked at how fast they're actually making this happen. So it's good things that happening as far as the residential. We also made some good decisions business-wise. I think it's making the town better. I do think we are moving toward improving the town in every way possible. And so I'm glad to be a part of that. And thank the staff for the job they did.
Councilman Mayor.
Well, the past couple months have been very trying. I've tried to reach out to everybody that I've been able to. Just about everybody that has reached out to me, I tried to invite them to a circle out at comments. A couple faces are familiar, some are unfamiliar. I wouldn't wish what we did tonight on anybody. It's been a rough period, but I'm glad it's over.
Councilwoman Jordan.
Yes, I'd like to say, I'd like to say that I appreciate each and every one of you on this town council. You voted your conscience and your mind about the Confederate statue. Within time, certain things will heal. We have been moving in the right direction for the 8 years I've been up here, and I want to continue to move forward as time goes on, whether I'm up here or not. I believe my faith is deeply rooted in things in the spirit dwelling within me will convict me day and night if I don't do what's right. So it's not, I just want everyone to know, not just because I'm black, an African-American female, that I voted the way I did. I voted because it's right. I don't want to offend anyone. And the word says if you offend the least of them, or just one of them, you have offended the Lord. I don't want to answer about that to any, when my time comes. I'd like to further thank Tarboro PD. It's quiet in the neighborhood. I do have a couple things that I'd like to give you, Chief, for code enforcement. Go and check on, have some complaints on 2 houses on Carolina Avenue. One of the houses is the one that's been burned, the lady, and I think the same owner owns it. I won't call the name, but I do know who owns it. We have to be diligent about that, the property over there, that's my ward, and as we have elsewhere in town, with making sure that the property owners do what they're supposed to do. No one wants to live like what I saw. I took pictures, so I'll give that information to you at the end. I want to thank you all for what y'all doing, all the rest of the town. I talked to people. I saw my trucks out when we had the heavy storm. Electric department raising in. I saw my trucks out. I found the people coming checking checking my drains, I think. Somebody was checking water meters. I was very excited about what I saw. You guys were out there, and I'm thankful that you went to help other little small towns that had issues. So that shows togetherness and brotherhood and sisterhood. And thank all of you again.
Councilman Dickens.
I'd just like to thank the council and the people in the audience for the input that everybody gave. And I guess it was a pleasant evening because nobody shot anybody. So I thank you and I thank the council for
Councilwoman Bowden.
Yes, I would like to thank everyone on the council for giving such thought into this process. It was not easy. A lot of feelings are tied up into this, and we just got to move forward. And I was strong about it from the beginning, and I just hope that people in my ward understand that who are in opposition to it, that there are tough decisions we have to make, but at the end, I do represent the entire town of Tarboro. So that's what I have to do, and I have to make decisions that maybe unpractical, but in the end, we'll come together on this. And I appreciate you guys for what you do. I really do. It is time to make a change, and the time is now. That's it.
Thank you. Councilman Burnett?
I'm good.
Councilman Brown?
Yes. I also like to thank the tree crew for the great job they do to keep the wind from falling on the power line, so your crew don't have to go out and fix it. That's the preparation before it happens, and that works really well. And the public works for doing their job afterwards. I thank them. And I also like to go back to the moments council, did what they needed to do. I think we still all respect one another, we get along with one another. Decisions like this at times come along and they are very difficult and hard to make. And you have to try to apply so many people's feelings into your vote. That's why I like just getting out and talking to people and try to let my vote represent the people that are in my ward. Whether I agree with their decisions or not agree with them, I believe I am a representative of my ward, and my voice should kind of reflect what they feel. And not my personal, as much my personal opinions on it, but, listening to their opinions. I hope that this town, and I believe this town is going to take a little bit of time of healing, and, I feel like we'll get through this. I like dealing with positive things, just like the shell building out there, getting sidewalks done, just improving town property, those types of things are things that I really enjoy doing. But sometimes you have to deal with these issues also. But hopefully, let's all try to get along. It's what's done is done. Let's move on to the next thing.
Thank you. We will now move into closed session. Yeah. So, moved in second, moved into closed session, any discussion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Closed session.